to invest in the future. And I think this has been a very, very plain speaking, simple to understand, uncomplicated budget, which has prepared the foundation for a resurgent India, for a India of tomorrow. In a way, the focus being on infrastructure spending, the huge thrust on capex by the government, 7 lakh crores on its own, 10.5 lakh crores with the states, will itself have a catapulting effect on the economy with a 4x multiplier. You can imagine the kind of demand that this will generate, the jobs and working opportunities that this will give, the way the MSMEs and all different sectors of industry and services will stand to gain. And on the back of this, I suspect that the private investments also will now start seeing the light of day in a big way.
Yes, we've been waiting for that big revival in capex by the private sector. Now you have a government which is going to be increasing the capex by 35%, especially for infrastructure development. Mr. Goyal, is this the big way of the government to boost employment, job creation? Because if there have been critics of this government, that's what they've been saying, that enough emphasis has not been laid on that.
Well, I think this is the best way to generate new work opportunities. The fact that government focuses itself on creating the enablers in investing in infrastructure and allows the private sector to crowd in with the greater demand that is generated from this infrastructure investment. Private sector comes in with all the steel, cement, all the other facilities that are required, investments in electronics, investments in electrical goods, in machinery, in capital goods. So in a way, the government truly is playing the role of a facilitator of growth and engaging both the private and public investment, which is what she spoke about, the 5 pillars of Amrit Kal. One of the pillars that Honorable Finance Minister spoke about was the virtuous cycle of private investment and public capital investment, together expediting India's development. तो मैं समझता हूँ एक प्रकार से आधुनिक भारत की और भविष्य की आधारशिला इस बजट में रखी।
Mr. Goyal, this budget is also coming against the backdrop of global uncertainty. We don't know how fast and how quickly, for example, central banks around the world will be increasing interest rates, beginning with the United States. Back home as well, inflation has become an area of concern. I hope you will appreciate I'm playing devil's advocate here. Has enough been done to boost consumption, to manage inflation? Because अगर हम आजकल की महंगाई देखेंगे, wallet पे तो pressure है.
आज महंगाई पूरे विश्व में देखने को मिलती है। यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स ऑफ अमेरिका की आज की महंगाई शायद कहते हैं 40-50 साल में सबसे अधिक है। ये दुनिया भर में कमोडिटी प्राइसेस और फूड प्रोडक्ट्स पे महंगाई का एक बड़ी संकट देखने को मिल रहा है। लेकिन अगर आप भारत की स्थिति देखें तो माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी लगातार इस विषय को संभाले हुए हैं। आप देखेंगे तो भारत में हमारे किसानों ने बहुत अच्छा उत्पादन करने से लगभग फूड स्टफ्स की महंगाई नहीं होने दी। आज भारत में चाहे वो सब्जियां हो, चाहे वो अनाज चावल वगैरह हो, दालों में भी, जिसमें विश्व भर में बहुत महंगाई चल रही है, दालों में भी लगभग भारत में पिछले 1 वर्ष में संतुलन बना रहा है, प्राइसेस ज़्यादा बढ़े नहीं। एक पूरे देश की जो ताकत लगी है हमारे किसानी क्षेत्र में खास तौर पे, उसने भारत को एक प्रकार से विश्व का फूड बास्केट बना दिया। आज हम भारत से लगभग 3-3.5 लाख करोड़ रुपए का फूड प्रोडक्शन और मरीन प्रोडक्शन एक्सपोर्ट करने जा रहे हैं। विल बी अमंग्स द टॉप 10 एक्सपोर्टर्स ऑफ agri and animal husbandry products. So I think we have been able to reasonably keep a control on inflation in the country, but there can be no doubt that this is an international global problem that all countries in the world are facing.
Then Mr. Goyal, In that sense, would you say this was a missed opportunity to maybe rein in inflation, maybe, duty cuts on palm oil, crude oil? This was, for example, a suggestion by industry bodies, and, you even had the Hindustan Unilever chairman talking about it.
Incidentally, in the last 5 or 6 months, we have continuously been reducing the import duties on various oils. So I'm sure the Hindustan Lever chairman also is aware of it. We have continuously been reducing the duties on palm oil, on crude palm oil, on refined palm oil. However, the overall production in Indonesia, Malaysia, which are our main suppliers, have also been lower. Indonesia has gone in for a massive biodiesel or biofuel policy in which they are diverting their palm oil, and therefore they are imposing export taxes. So while we reduce the taxes significantly, they increase the export taxes. So to that extent, the entire benefit was not available for us. But on the part of the government, we've been on a continuous tax cutting spree on import duties on oil.
Mr. Goyal, with the stock markets, which were at an all-time high in 2020, 2021, we're talking about returns of 40% plus. While this is a government that has privatized Air India, there are, quarters that believe that could it have been done faster when we talk about privatization and disinvestment. BPCL hasn't happened. Even with the markets where they're at, we're seeing a target of 65,000 crores. Isn't that conservative?
Madam, it is very easy to make faster expectations for disinvestment. But disinvestment is a very complicated process. It involves several stakeholders. It involves a compilation of a lot of data, and in public sector undertakings, particularly Air India was a very complicated disinvestment with a historical baggage of several years, different type of asset classes which had to be segregated between what will be disinvested, what will remain with the government. And in the midst of the disinvestment, at its peak, COVID came in. And with COVID coming in, you know what the aviation sector went through. So I think despite COVID having been at its worst for the last 2 years, I think I must compliment the Honorable Finance Minister, our colleague, the Civil Aviation Minister, and both the teams for having successfully disinvested Air India despite such trying times. I'm sure they are working very aggressively on several other proposals which are on the table. The Honorable Finance Minister today announced the successful disinvestment of Neelachal Ispat. It was a company set up by MMTC under my ministry, and there was no business for MMTC to be in the steel making business. So I'm really delighted that MMTC is now no more involved in the steel manufacturing business. With the disinvestment of Neelachal Ispat, a lot of funds will flow back and MMTC will become debt-free and will pave the way for closure of some of these deadwood companies which have, like MMTC, which have no business to be in business.